I'm only going to be sitting here talking for a very short time. I had promised that we would do a bit today about the forms, aka ritual. And many people kind of have a adverse reaction to forms and ritual. And there are some traditions that kind of just push that aside. And there's some grounding in the Buddhist teaching for doing that. His teaching also warned about forms and rituals. And yet, rituals seem to be so important, not just for Zen. Clearly, they're important for Zen, but in so many societies. I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, I spent several days visiting American Indian mound sites in the southern part of Ohio. These predate the arrival of Europeans by over a century. So, I mean, some of the earliest inhabitants of this part of the country, these mound sites were created basically for ceremonies, rituals. And they weren't just serving the local populace, because some of these mounds are pretty large and intricate. So you had groups from all the surrounding area, and they weren't just hopping into their automobiles, they were actually walking. So their devotion, the importance of ritual was pretty huge for those societies, kind of lumped into under the title of Hopewell Indians. And prior to that was the Adena. I apologize, I keep falling into the old habit of using the term Indians from time to time, and obviously that was European ignorance. Has nothing to do with them. So these were cultures that, in their own way, were quite advanced, and they were able to come together and cooperate in order to observe these rituals together. And they had priest figures that we call today shaman, who would conduct these rituals, but they were clearly of huge importance to the inhabitants. For them to travel so far, invest all that time and those resources into their construction, and then coming to them periodically to follow the rituals. And archaeologists have been able to unearth some of the objects that were involved in the performance of these rituals, which no need to get into the details, but clearly they were serving that kind of a purpose. And clearly they were of profound importance to those societies, holding them together. So, as often happens for me, when I'm working on a given topic, I'll encounter something just within a day or so when I'm going to do this presentation from some outside source that's about the topic. So the same thing happened to me yesterday. The New York Times had a guest essay by Bruce Feiler titled "The World is Feeling Its Way Toward Togetherness, One Weird and Wonderful Ritual at a Time." And it speaks to the role of ritual. And I'm not going to go through this article because I want to spend most of our time looking at our rituals. But a nice way of summing it up is with a sentence in here. that states rituals are the glue that holds society together. You might say the first human algorithm. Uh, Paleoanthropologists have identified what could be ritual gathering places from 300,000 years ago, where our earliest ancestors honored their dead. Of course, funerary rites are one of those areas where ritual seems to be particularly important because you're crossing a threshold. And those threshold events, whether they be birth, baptism, or marriage, coming together, or death, or in our time, retirement, and rituals around that, which are starting to die out because nobody works at the same company long enough to really retire in the old sense of the word and collect their gold watch and what have you. But that's another passage to another stage of life. So we have all these places where ritual seems to be called. And just another brief comment about the one surrounding death, which is, I think most people would agree, the main uh, event that seems to call for ritual. Back during my hospice volunteer days, I purchased a book titled Sacred Dying, Creating Rituals for Embracing the End of Life, just pointing to the role that rituals can have in terms of our acceptance of things and recognizing the specialness of what's taking place. So objects that form part of the author's suggestions for creating a ritual space when someone's actively dying include things we're very familiar with, candles, incense, clearly setting the space apart, like, like a Zen. So the rituals we're going to speak of here are unique to us, and us being Soto Zen Buddhists, but even each practice center adds their own wrinkles. We can talk about a wrinkle or two that we've developed that are kind of unique to us. Some of them intentionally, some of them just kind of sneak in. It's just the nature of the thing. And I think it's safe to say that's always been happening with reference to rituals throughout. So let's get into the forms that we follow here and the role that they play. And it's multi-layered. It's not like I can say they all just do this. If, in fact, as we will see, those of us that are studying the Thursday night text, Living by Vow, a lot of the texts in there are part of our ritual practice and chants that we do. Ceremonies like the full moon ceremony. So, and as we are studying about the importance of vow for our practice, vow is embedded in a lot of our forms. We'll come to appreciate that through the study of that text. There's also in the spirit of Thich Nhat Hanh's wonderful teachings, this aspect of just mindfulness. And that's how, when I started to practice, they were mostly presented to me as mindfulness. So when we enter the Zendo, and there are variations on this, different teachers I practiced with have had variations on it, but initially, what's pretty common, obviously, there's what we call a standing bow, where the hands are in gasho. So we're going to do some terminology here too. So there's gasho, and even the gasho. I mean, I can remember Taigen Dan Layton. He was my primary teacher, but he kind of tightened up my practice of gasho because my fingers would tend to kind of be spread out a bit. And he said, no, they should be together. So, and then how we hold it up around our nose level. So then, although he told me, as he's giving me this instruction, he said the first dharma air after Suzuki Roshi, Richard Baker, he would do this. So there are these variations that become personal quirks. And obviously, if an abbot of San Francisco Zen Center is doing that, it's probably going to spread. So we have to be careful. So, and the standing bow. I think we're all very familiar with that. We learned about that first time we visited Zen Center. So coming back to how we incorporate that into entering the Zendo, then there's the mindfulness about which foot do we enter in with. And I think the standard practice is to enter with the left foot. And then when we exit with the right foot first. So there's this symmetry. And there's an awful lot of symmetry in the forms. Symmetry, harmony. So when we get into the service itself, I want to emphasize that. It's really taking, we've got, for us, a pretty good sized group here, but, there are centers that have 50, 100 people, or maybe even more that are coming regularly. So it's kind of a beautiful thing when they're following the same forms. What you're doing is, it's also a practice of kind of dropping off self, because you are just becoming part of Sangha. And Sangha is doing this together. It's not me, it's the whole Sangha. That's the powerful aspect of it. And we can, and I think should, follow forms at home in our private home practice too. But you'll obviously, I hope you sense the different experience of doing that when we come together. Because now we more clearly are giving up sense of self, allowing self to drop off, and just becoming one unit in harmony. So the ritual is actually an enactment of the Dharma in that sense. That's what we're doing. In fact, back to Taigen Dan Layton, he wrote what I think is a pretty important essay that describes the practice of Zazen, the heart of our practice, as a ritual enactment. So that's a pretty nice way of seeing the centrality of ritual for us. If Zazen can be described as ritual, and it clearly has ritual aspects. I didn't coordinate what we were going to chant this morning because it's always more interesting when I don't. As Joe knows, when somebody becomes Doa, there's kind of some sort of connection that gets established between teacher and Doa, and it transcends words. So this sense of just the forms of zazen that Dogen is setting forth. In our practice, at least in Western society, and I suspect more globally, but I can't speak from a global position because my practice is pretty much limited to the good old U.S. But we've kind of moved beyond just full lotus and half lotus for proper sitting. We're all the way to chairs, or even beyond that, if that's no longer adequate to address people's limitations. But regardless of how we sit, the cosmic mudra is a standard practice. That's a mudra, and the fact that we sit with eyes open, because a lot of meditation practices, the eyes are closed. So Zazen does have these kind of ritual aspects to it, how we sit and the posture. So let's continue on with our harmonious ritual practice as a Sangha. We've introduced the entering of the Zendo. And another ritual that precedes that is the 5-minute bell that it's usually Joe, the Doan, who rings that, because especially important here, because we tend to kind of chat beforehand, which at other centers, that's generally once you arrive, you come in silence. So it's a way, but since we only come together twice a week, we kind of try to find a middle path between having the opportunity to converse and catch up with people and observing this practice. As Dogen puts it in Fukan Zazen, for Zazen, a quiet room is suitable. Suitable. I always emphasize that to people. And I got this taste, as I've said in the past, when I did my 3-week intensive practice period at San Francisco Zen Center, right in the heart of San Francisco, and that is not a quiet place. So it's suitable for practice, but not always attainable. And it's not that we can't practice. And just in my sitting with various groups in Ohio, I've also had environments where we're right next to the laundry room and there's washers, dryers, all kinds of scenarios. So what gets laid out are sound instructions, but we also have to respond to Dharma positions. And if my Dharma position includes a washing machine, it's maybe a little out of balance. To recognize that actually that's a beautiful thing. To welcome that, because that helps my practice. Can I be with that and let irritation drop off? if I can, potential ramifications for my life overall are obvious. Right? So it can be helpful when things aren't according to the textbook. So, and we do the 5-minute bell at centers like at San Francisco Zen Center or Jikoji, our home temple. They use the Han, which we have one of those in the entranceway there. And there's kind of a ritual behind that. It begins 15 minutes beforehand. Since we don't use it, I won't get into all the details. But it's very particular about how that Han is struck, the intervals, roll downs, the whole shebang. And what it's doing is it's a timing device for the whole sangha. So they can time their arrival at the Zendo. Make sure you get in. One of the rituals at San Francisco Zen Center, for instance, is after that second roll down, the curtain that separates the Zendo from the hallway leading to the Zendo, that gets pulled by the Ino who's sitting right on the other side of that entrance. So if you don't get in there by that 3 minutes prior, you're sitting in the hallway. They have cushions out there. You don't get into the Zendo. That's ritual. To emphasize the importance of timeliness, harmony within a sangha, that timeliness is essential. But things happen, as we all know. Sometimes you're running late. So they don't just lock the door. They've got cushions for you out there in the hallway. But yet it's a wonderful way of focusing one's attention on the time. And they've got the Han going, so you can't claim your watch was off or something. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So once Joe has signaled that, we do our standing bow, enter with the left foot first. Then we come and we all the movement in the Zendo is clockwise. Again, harmony. The Rinzai folks go counterclockwise. So we sit facing the wall, part of the ritual. The Rinzai folks sit facing center. In Zen Mountain Monastery, which carries both those traditions, they alternate. So they can honor both. And Kinhin varies between the two traditions. So we'll get to that, but in terms of the pace, ours in Soto Zen, it's a slower pace. In fact, our pace is many centers would say we're really kind of in a hurry, aren't we? Because the common ritual is much, much slower and always half step at a time. Being a Coltrane fan, I would tell people we don't do giant steps here. It's a great tune, one of my favorites, but we don't do that here. So, and we also, when we're going clockwise and then come to our cushion, of course, a couple of standing bows are involved. We bow to our cushion. And even if there's nobody else in the Zendo, doesn't matter. You turn facing center and you bow to the Sangha. Even if it's a Sangha of one currently, just you in the Zendo. And then keeping with the clockwise aspect, if you're sitting on a zafu, this doesn't work so well for benches or chairs, but if you're sitting on a zafu, you sit facing center and then you spin around clockwise, so you're facing the wall. My bench doesn't swing too much, so I have to. And I kind of missed that. I thought that was the biggest thing I missed when I had this using a bench, was that ability to spin around and settle into my position. So once we've done that, I'll just quickly mention a couple of rituals that we don't really follow here, but for those of you that go to other centers, and maybe it's something we should do here too. That might be something, a joint effort between me and the board, if you decide there are practices you'd like to add. But when this person I was describing, who's the first one into Zen now, when the people arrive to either side of that individual and they come, they stand at their cushion and they bow, that person who's already sitting would also bow. And put their hands immediately right back in their cosmic mudra. So that's a beautiful practice. And again, it's about harmony, togetherness, binding together of the songs. So we're all seated. The 5 minutes have now elapsed, and it's time to begin formal zazen. And I want to make sure I cover this because we'll have more and more people, hopefully, that serve as timekeeper or even doa. It's 3 bells to begin a period of zazen. And at the end of zazen, it's either 2 bells or 1 bell. That depends on what we're doing next. If the next activity involves kinhin or walking meditation, then it'll be 2 bells. That's the signal, oh, we're going to do kinhin. And then if it's 1 bell, then we're either going to do a dharma talk next or a meal, or it might be the end of the day. But we're not doing kinhin. So there's that, and there are lots of Morse codes that get embedded in these rituals. Again, it's communication, so we can all be in harmony. We know where we're at and how we're going to be interrelating with others based on these codes that are being transmitted. So for our Saturday morning practice, we have 2 sittings, each 30 minutes. Oh, and one ritual that I need to insert here because it comes in the middle is the robe chant. For people who do have rakusus or ocases, this is when we put those on, is after the first sitting, and we do the robe chant. So we changed the robe chant minimally from what they do at Jikoji. Jikoji, because it was founded by a Japanese teacher, Koban Shino, they have the Daisai Geda Puku, the Japanese version, first and third, and the English is center. But since we're an American center, we made the decision to do English first and third, Japanese in the center. A little tweak. It's a good example of how we shift things a bit. So with that, yeah, go ahead.
I'm facing forward, so when we do the rope chant,
Yeah.
I'm not actually looking to see. Do
Oh,
you
right.
actually put
We put it on our
your
heads.
heads? Okay.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And that's, I'm glad you brought that up because my first teacher, it was like you would just, when you bow, you would catch it as it comes in. And my second teacher, Mike Newhall, thought that was hilarious. Said, no, you just look down. So, so I switched now. But so we've gone through, we've done the sitting, but we need to cover the kinhin that takes place between the first and the second sitting. So that introduces another mudra, the shashu, which now I think I'm going to go ahead and stand up. The shashu is the, if you're right-handed, I'm going to give the directions, but if you're left-handed, just reverse it because the dominant hand is the top hand. So the non-dominant hand, you have the thumb tucked in, fingers folded, about a forearm roughly parallel with the floor. And then the dominant hand sits over this. And the thumb is just positioned like that. So, and if you have a rakusu, it goes under the rakusu. But I'll keep mine outside just so you can see. And holding the elbows out a bit. And then that half step at a time. So I'm not going to get into the meditation aspects of it, connecting it to the breath. That's for a meditation instruction. We might do that one of these days too. But we're going to have our hands full just with the ritual. So we do that typically for 10 minutes here. And we, at the ringing, or we could use the inken, the small, very small bell that sits on top of a little stick. But we use the clappers. You could go with either one. But whichever one it is, they're struck twice to start and once to end. So we're all starting together. Now, some places they don't start together. And this includes Chicago. You just get up and you begin. Which I get that. It kind of builds in this flow of just meditation, zazen. There's no discontinuity there. You get up because you're still in zazen. You just say, but most places that I have practiced seem to pull the sangha together so that we're in harmony in terms of beginning. So we get up, and of course bow to our cushion, bow to each other, and then put our hands in shashu, and then we equally space. This is something we don't always do so well, and we want to maintain that fairly even spacing throughout the period of kinhin. And then at the end of kinhin, the clappers are struck once, and you bow. Some people will put their hands in gasho because it seems like, well, if you're going to do a bow, you should have your hands like that. But this is just shashu bow. And then at a normal pace, go back to your cushion. Some places like Oman, and I get this, that you go past your cushion the first time, make another round. Because some people may be just past their cushion and others are right up on their cushion. So you end up with a bit of a mess there. We deal with the mess. We bear our name of Crooked River. We could veer off and come back. So we come back, bow to our cushion, bow to each other, and then we do our second sitting. Then at the end of the second sitting on Saturdays, that's always pretty much always followed by a service, which is where we do the chanting and the incense offering. This is where I wanted to spend the most time because it's, I love this service because it's the most intricate. And you can keep going deeper and deeper into it and extract even more beauty to it. But it really is a fabulous form of ritual. So that's why I wanted to spend most of, and probably all the remaining time we have here this morning on that piece too. The doshis roll in the doan, which are kind of the central players, but everybody's involved. So when we get up, everybody is in shashu facing center. And then this case just as was the case this morning, I'll be the doshi. And I set up here with my hands in shashu. And I'm just waiting for Joe to get settled in. And once he's ready, then I take 2 steps to the side. Everything is kind of very much like a square here, my square of operation. And it's in synchrony with the doan. So I come up to the altar, and then I do a side step to bow, light the incense, put it down, and then these are my doshi instructions are important for John too, because on Thursdays he's typically the doshi. There's no bow after the incense. I bow. Yeah, Mark.
Can you have somebody move the camera just a little bit so I can see you?
Let me.
Oh, that's perfect. Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So I'm bowing when I approach, and my departure bow is when I step to the side. That's my departure bow. So I'm not doing 2 bows facing that. And when I come over here, Joe, with my bow, he's striking the bell. So now our harmony starts to lock in. Up to that point, I'm just acting on my own. And now the rest of the song is getting ready because you're about to come into action. So I do this, and then I pivot, and I'm coming up the side of the bowing mat, and about halfway up, Joe rings the bell again. Now that's a signal to everybody else, because you've been facing center. Now you turn slightly to face the altar. So then when I get to the top, Joe rings the bell again. That's the signal. We're going to start doing some deep bows, also known as prostrations. So I'm just going to do a deeper standing bow for those. We do 3, of course. And I'll do a real one for the first one, because the way we do it, and lifting the hands. And then we'll do 2 more of those. The first set of bows, Joe is ringing the big bell. And then when my forehead hits the zabitan, he does what's called the stop, where striker on its flat side just comes down on the bell. That's on the first two bows, on the first set of bows. So more Morse code. The final bow, rather than that stop, he rings the small bell. So now there's the Morse code kicking in. That's the last bow for now. For you, because the doshi then does another round going up. And we used to use powdered incense. So we decided we could have dropped the second bow, but that didn't seem right. So we decided we'll just go up and do the bows at the altar.
Question, Dean.
Yeah.
To this point, that was where, because we weren't using the powdered incense,
Right.
that was where the deep bow came from after I put the stick incense in.
Oh, yeah. But actually, you're still, after it's in, so I come up, I bow, I put it in,
Yeah.
and then I'm stepping aside. Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing that as a replacement for lighting the other incense, so I can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
That's
that's fine. If you don't want me to do
yeah,
that.
no. Well, I mean, it's no biggie.
No,
I'm just kind of, yeah.
okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to try to understand.
Okay. So I go around for the second time, and my second set of bows are just me. Everybody else is just in shashu facing center. And the Morse code shifts now because after the bell is struck, there's no stop. There's no little bell, it's just empty space for the first two. And then the third bell, with just myself bowing, there is, after the bow, there is the small bell. So that's, everybody knows at that point, the bows have ended, we're now going to chant. So Joe gives the direction, and yeah, your next stop is at the beginning of the chant that we're going to do. So, and let's say it's the Heart Sutra. I want to do that because we've got, yeah. Joe is counting. Is ready. Because that's where we have some added wrinkles that are actually pretty beautiful. But the beginning of the chant, so Joe does the stop and chants the title, the Maha Praja Paramita Hridaya Sutra. What I did at the end there is called the wave. What that signals is we're chanting, not reading. So when we did Fukan Zazengi, it's Fukan Zazengi. If it had been Fukan Zazengi, I'm chanting. It's wholly different. Because if you're at centers like San Francisco, typically Sandokai is going to be chanted. So they'd be doing, and I know that right away if it's introduced as Sandokai. The teaching of thusness has been intimately communicated by Buddhism. It's off you go. You just boom. And if it's Sandokai, the way it's introduced, it's recited. So the wave is an important piece to it. Another important signal is, I'll call it the fade. The fade is where it's ending. So at the end of the Heart Sutra, Gate Gate Parvate Parasangate Bodhisvaha. At the end. So that's the fade and the Morse code. So this kind of gets built in. You take it in and you just know it. That's the response is automatic. So after that, then we move into the next piece, either a second chant, if there's going to be one, or into the dedication. And in the Heart Sutra, then we don't need to do the whole thing, but maybe I'll have Joe swing over here. Let me do a time check here. There we go. All right, so we've got several bells that occur during the course of the Heart Sutra. So the first bell comes early on, and this is just a signal between the Doan and the Doshi. Because when we first start, everybody's in Shashu except for me. I'm in Gasho. And when we get to skandhas, all 5 skandhas are empty. He rings the bell. Then I come into Shashu, so you're not even going to notice. The next bell is the second time that the word mind comes up. So he strikes it, and then this is a doshi thing. I'm going up here, and this is where, when we use powdered incense, I'd be offering that. But instead, I'm just bowing to the side, but because your next bell is when we get to the word attain, with nothing to attain. And I'm timing this. This is a synchronization. This is one of the beautiful wrinkles to it. So I depart mind in the bell. I get back there, and I'm ready to bow. And this is on me, based on paying attention to harmony, the pace at which we're going. And I know I need to move fast with Jill on the Makutio. She's got us going at a good pace. So I'm not taking my time. I'm moving with some intention. And then by the time I get here, if I've done it well, then you'll get to attain, and Joe rings the bell as I'm bowing. And then I'm back in the shasha. So, and the other thing, I think that's pretty much it for the Heart Sutra. And we'll just pretend this is a service where that's the only thing we're going to chant. So we will go through that because the rest of it's kind of short. We'll go through the dedication of merit. So pick up from there and let's just kind of go through that whole thing with you doing your bit, and I'll do my bit.
Assuming we just finish the Heart Sutra?
Yeah, we can finish that.
Assuming we finish the Heart, yeah.
Right. So, we're going to finish that. We'll just do the gate.
Gate.
Yeah. Now standing bow. Okay, now let's flow into the dedication of prayer.
May we awaken Buddha's compassion and luminous mirror wisdom, chanting the Heart Sutra. We dedicate this merit to
Bow. Now that's the signal that we go into a deep bow.
our original ancestor in India, great teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, our first woman ancestor, great teacher Mahapajapati, our first ancestor in China, great teacher Bodhidharma, our sixth ancestor in China, great teacher Hunain, our 11th ancestor in China, great teacher Dongshan, our first ancestor in Japan, great teacher Eihei Dogen, our first ancestor in America, great teacher Shugaku Shinryu, great teacher Jikai Dainen, great teacher Hon Koben, and to the perfect wisdom Bodhisattva Manjushri.
Bell. Bells are always signaling something. So that means that bell means we get back up. Okay. And we're in Gasho.
Gratefully we offer this virtue to all beings.
Okay, so now we all come in to chant together. And while you're doing that, I'm approaching the altar.
All Buddhas,
10 directions, 3 worlds.
Now that bell there is the signal between me and the Doan. I should be just coming to the altar and timing my bow with that bell. And then the next bell, when we get to that, will be where I want to be exiting, stepping to the side and bowing.
all venerable ones,
Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas.
Okay, now, for me, for you, all you're doing is continuing with the chant to the end. But for me, we're back in synchronization mode. And this is where John's getting there well before it's done. And the synchronization would have me, so I'm going pretty slow, which is kind of nice. That feels good. So I want to get to the top of the mat when we're finishing up. So that rather than me standing there, see, this is what makes it a beautiful form, is there's this flow that doesn't get interrupted. You know, if I'm standing still for any period of time, I know as a doshi, I messed something up here because it should have a flow. And so when I'm going to get up here, we can start from that side now. Mahasattvas, wisdom, beyond wisdom, there. I'm just come here and now we're all bowing together. So we do our 3 bows, and then we're ready for the final 4 bell exit as we come over. So the first bell after those 3 bows is the bow. We're all bowing to the Buddha. Then everybody's going to shift. My only shift is taking a step back, but everybody else is going to shift. You've been facing the altar. Now you're going to pivot just a slight angle so you're facing center again. Because the second bell is bowing to Sangha. So we all bow together. And then everybody goes into Shashu for the mudra. And the doshi goes to his or her cushion. And I'm the only one that bows in shastra on that one. Everybody else, you just stand there with your hands in shastra. And then I turn and we all bow on that final bow, hands in shastra. So that's the service. Oh, one other thing I wanted to comment on is, and it references what I talked about with the fade, because when you go through, great teacher Jikai Diamond, great teacher Hone Koben, and to the perfect wisdom Bodhisattva Maju Shri, there's a fade that got worked in there a long time ago. And that kind of sends the signal that, oh, it's in. That's the end. During a service, if you go most any other place, it would be great teacher Houn Koben and to the perfect wisdom Bodhisattva Manju Shri, because now you're taken up a notch. Gratefully we offer this virtue to all beings. And what you're doing, think of it like a beautiful choral work. You're building up to the big crescendo. The whole choir's going to join in now. All Buddhas. That's really, that's why just a few little details like this can really make a big difference. And it is a beautiful form. People sometimes ask, and I love when they do, about singing. And actually, the full moon ceremony, I have heard that presented as song. That's a beautiful thing. But what you need is the leader. Could be the Dawan, but also there's a role, I think it's called the Kyoko or something, the lead chanter. You need or somebody who really can lead that, to really carry it off. That's why churches, even if they don't have a choir, then the priest has a pretty good singing voice. And that can get the congregation to join in. You need somebody who can lead the way. But if you don't have that, and I'm certainly not volunteering for that. It's one of my gifts. So, but if we did have somebody, that I'd be all for doing that. But that's really what you need, is somebody that can really lead us. And then we just kind of fall in behind. So I hope this has been helpful in terms of just deepening appreciation for these rituals and how they relate to our practice. That they really are an embodiment of the Dharma, the teachings. It's not some alien form that we're expected to do for some God knows what reason. They actually do directly link up with our practice and the way we lead our lives. And maybe most importantly, which is why I referenced it several times, is this sense of harmony, difference and unity at work in the course of a service. So, and the vital roles played by certainly the Dawan, the Makugyo, the Doshi, but everybody. There's this rich interplay. And then that carries over when we're doing a full day of practice. There's the rich interplay that takes place in the kitchen. And in work practice, which we do every other month here, or after a meal, the cleanup. So we have ample opportunities to practice harmony. And just see it as such, not as an alien ritual, but see it as a really key part of the practice. All right. Well, it looks like Mark's been trying to drive while following this talk. The airbag has not gone off, so I think he's okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and shake up.
May our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.
Well, I had fun presenting. I hope you had fun on your end.
Thank you, Dean. That was cool. Very helpful.
Hey, you guys, it's so exciting that there's so many